What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And today, the New York Giants made a potential roster move, bringing in a veteran offensive lineman for a free agency visit. As we all know, training camp kicks off this week. The Giants players, they report to the building tomorrow morning. They take their first practice starting on the field on Wednesday morning, and then it just ramps up right from there into the preseason, into the regular season. We're right around the corner from getting New York Giants football, but the Giants bringing in Greg Van Roten, veteran guard. That name might sound familiar to you guys who are viewing the channel because very early on in the offseason, in fact, Alex, I think before the offseason even began, when we were looking ahead to the offseason because the Giants were so bad at the end of the regular season, we were looking at potential free agents for them to target. And I think we mentioned Greg Van Roten as one of those top targets that they could consider because he had such a great connection to New York Giants offensive line coach Carmen Bricolo. So a player you guys might be familiar with, Greg Van Roten, coming into the Giants building for a free agency visit. We kind of want to unpack that, discuss whether or not we think this would be a good signing and whether or not we think the signing will happen. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your initial reaction to the Giants bringing in Greg Van Roten for a free agency visit right before training camp?
This is a really interesting one, and I fully support this move. Why? Because the Giants can never have enough depth on the offensive line. Now, this isn't a done deal just yet. He's visiting in a free agency meeting today, according to Josina Anderson. We don't know if he will sign. But look, Greg Van Roten, I like what Carmen Bricolo is doing here, and he's bringing in some of his experienced guys that know his blocking scheme, know his system, know how he coaches, and have been successful with him. Jermaine Illuminor is obviously the other guy here in that equation. He's been practicing at left guard. He's capable of playing right tackle. He's able to kind of play a multitude of different positions, and that value doesn't go unnoticed. We certainly really, really like Jermaine Illuminor. We've been talking about him for months, way before they even signed him. And that's another guy, you mentioned it earlier, Greg Van Roten, someone that we had mentioned months ago as a potential option for this Giants offensive line as well. Greg Van Roten, now, okay, let me preface this by saying he's 34 years old, and traditionally he's been horrible. But last year he had a career season. He was super bad with the Jets. Like, wasn't even close to being competent with the Jets, which was unfortunate. But Jets fans will tell you he was horrible. 37 pressures allowed in 2021. He played 354 snaps in 2022 with the Buffalo Bills, gave up 10 pressures. But last year he suddenly figured it out. It may have just been the scheme that Carmen Bricolo was running. 1,024 snaps at right guard. And by the way, we don't really have a right guard right now. It's like Marcus McKethan, or now you could say Greg Van Roten if they do sign him. Maybe Jermaine Illuminor were to play right guard. Who knows? That's a position that is certainly going to be open for a position battle. Evan Neal, nobody really knows what's happening with Evan Neal right now. But based on what I have heard and what we've seen about Evan Neal, he has not really started training with this team yet. He is still recovering from that foot surgery he had at the end of last season. So if you're the Giants and you're looking at Evan Neal saying, well, he's basically missed a full offseason of working on his fundamentals, getting back into physical shape, how is he going to show up in training camp and look like his best self? How is Evan Neal going to show up in training camp and do exactly what Carmen Bricolo needs to justify being the starting right tackle? I don't see how that's possible. Right now, Jermaine Illuminor is my starting right tackle. At left guard, it's Jon Runyan, and at right guard, it could end up being a guy like Greg Van Roten, unless Neal looks really good inside, or they cross-train him, or McKethan takes a really big step forward. It's impossible to tell at the moment. But what are your thoughts right now about right guard? Right now, I don't know who it's going to be. Greg Van Roten has way more experience than Marcus McKethan. He's better than Evan Neal at an RG position like that because Evan Neal just has no experience there. He may end up actually winning that starting job if they were to sign him to an affordable contract.
Yeah, for me, this is a potential insurance plan for Evan Neal. And I think this is the best way to put Evan Neal's situation going into this third season. He is the domino that falls and puts everything else into place. If Evan Neal plays well at right tackle, becomes a competent player in that position, and starts all 17 games, the Giants can place Jermaine Illuminor at right guard, where he's been very good in the past, and they can play Jon Runyan at left guard, where he's much better than he is at right guard career-wise, looking at his statistics. I mean, Jon Runyan has said he prefers to play left guard. That's where he's more comfortable, and the stats back that up. But so far, they've had him playing right guard, and they've had Jermaine Illuminor at left guard, and that's because they want their best guard playing alongside Evan Neal. So if Evan Neal starts to play well, everything falls into place. You got Jon Runyan on the left side, you got Jermaine Illuminor on the right side, and boom. Offensive line looks very solid and is probably an above-average unit. But If Evan Neal doesn't play well at right tackle, well, then you're probably talking about taking him out of the lineup altogether because he doesn't have a lot of experience at guard, and you're not just going to throw him in there as a starter. He has to earn that. So you're taking him out of the lineup. Jermaine Illuminor moves to right tackle. John Runyon probably at right guard still, or at left guard. Who's the other starting guard for this Giants team? Now you have Josh Azidu, you have Marcus McKethan, or you could have Greg Van Roten, a player who is very familiar with Carmen Bricelo and who had a career year in 2023 thanks to Carmen Bricelo and his coaching. So I think that Greg Van Roten would be perfect insurance plan, a piece of the insurance plan if Evan Neal doesn't pan out here at right tackle. And I'm sure a lot of Giants fans listening to this, they don't expect Evan Neal to pan out at right tackle. So they're probably excited by the Giants potentially bringing someone in to be one of those starting offensive linemen and give insurance to the Giants in case Evan Neal doesn't play well. So that's kind of what I envision for Greg Van Roten. Now, do I think this is a massive upgrade? This is like a Pro Bowler the Giants are bringing in? Absolutely not. But what it is a veteran player entering his 10th season in the NFL. You've got a veteran here, plenty of experience, who's had some good seasons in the past. Yes, with the Jets, like you said, Alex, he's had some really bad seasons as well. But under Carmen Bricelo in particular, he's played very well. And that's what this offensive line is. This is Bricelo's unit. He's implementing his blocking scheme, and he's constructing this lineup to look the way that he wants it to. If he didn't think that Greg Van Roten was a solid player, the Giants wouldn't be bringing him in for a visit. Greg Van Roten would not be here visiting with the Giants if Carmen Bricelo didn't believe that he could continue to get high-quality football play out of Greg Van Roten. So obviously, Carmen Bricelo liked coaching him last year, thinks he's a solid player, and would like to bring him back to the Giants potentially. Now, if they do sign him, will he be a starter for this team? I don't know. Again, I think that depends on Evan Neal and how well he plays, but at the very least, you have a player who can be a starter for this team. He started 17 games last year for the Las Vegas Raiders, and guys, they had the number 10 ranked offensive line in the NFL. So Greg Van Roten, whether you think he's a phenomenal player or not, he's at least an average player in the right blocking scheme and in the right system. And that's Carmen Bricelo's scheme and system, and that's what the Giants have. So I think this would be a perfect marriage. I do like some connection signings. You know, other times you see those kind of signings like years ago when it was James Bettcher, the Giants defense coordinator, and they signed Antoine Bethea as their free safety. That I didn't like. That didn't make sense. But when you see something like this, Jermaine Illuminor, an above-average player, a solid player, reuniting with a coach who got the most out of him in his career, that's a great signing. When you've got Greg Van Roten, same story with Carmen Bricelo reuniting, that's a connection signing that I can get behind and that I get really excited about. So I do love this idea. I think that the Giants should probably rush to get this deal done, make sure that he doesn't go on any other visits and go reunite with anyone else across the league and sign elsewhere. I would really like to see the Giants get this deal done. But Alex, I do wonder, if the Giants were to sign Greg Van Roten, do you expect him to become a full-time starter on this offensive line, or do you view this as a depth player who has the chance to start, or is he like a 17-game starter in your eyes?
I mean, look, if Greg Van Roten at 34 years old, with the majority of his career being underwhelming, is starting a right guard, that's a problem, right? That's not, to me, that's not a solution. That is a last resort. That is okay, Marcus McKethan is not developing. We don't have another better option. Look, he's okay. He's an okay player. He's not a good player. He's not a great player. He's an okay, serviceable talent. Look, not every single player on your offensive line can be great, and I think that we can all agree that that's unrealistic, especially with the Giants who needed to go out and get multiple starters. But if the Giants want to win football games next year, Jermaine Illuminor is starting at right tackle. I don't even think this should be a discussion, to be quite honest with you. If the Giants want to win football games next year, Evan Neal should not be playing right tackle. He is not a good player there. And I just was reading a tweet 6 weeks ago. He wasn't even he wasn't physically able to even step foot in practice in spring ball. So 6 weeks later, is he capable? Is he able to go out there and play at an NFL caliber level, like during training camp? I don't know. That's the question we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah, huge question marks with Evan Neal, but I will say he wasn't healthy. Ankle injury was bothering him in the spring. The doctors didn't clear him to participate in OTAs and minicamp, but he is not on the PUP list. So it does seem like he is healthy and ready to go for the start of training camp, which I do think is a pretty important update here because we did have question marks. Would Evan Neal be there for the start of camp? Looks like he will be. So the position battle officially starts on Wednesday in my eyes.
So I think that they can put Evan Neal on the PUP list tomorrow when they do. I was just reading about it. I know Dan Duggan said that Neal's is the one he's most curious about when the full roster reports tomorrow. So they could end up putting him on the PUP list, I think. But if he doesn't end up on the PUP list, I guess I do feel like he's physically able to go out there and compete. If he does, though, land on the physically unable to perform list, that is very, very bad for him. Like, very bad for him, because that means he's going to miss essential time to build chemistry and make progress in a system, by the way, that is brand new to him. Carmen Brasillo is a brand new coach with a brand new ideology and blocking scheme. If he misses essential time to develop in that scheme, he is going to get left behind. And I keep saying this, but Jermaine Illuminor is coming here already knowing Carmen Brasillo's scheme. Like, he already knows the blocking scheme. All he has to do is get the playbook down. I'm sure he's already done his due diligence and, done all his reading, and he knows everything he needs to know. So right now, if you're Evan Neal, man, you better understand that your job is on the line. Like, he may not be starting on this offensive line because, look, if he loses this right tackle job, Anthony, I don't trust him to play right guard immediately because he's never played there. He hasn't even cross-trained at right guard. So we're really going to sit here and act like he's going to go and switch over to right guard like a easy peasy, no problems. That's not how it works, man. That's not how NFL works. Like, you can't just change a guy's position having never played there with no experience and no practice sessions. So I don't think that if he loses that job, Neal's going to be riding the freaking bench. And that's a big problem for a team that spent the 8th overall pick on him 2 years ago. So I do think that right now, Greg Van Roten, they got to bring him in for a simple reason, and the reason is they don't have that many talented players at right guard, and they need to prepare for the reality that Jermaine Illuminor is going to be starting at right tackle because John Runyan is best at left guard. I am tired of this team putting players in positions where they do not play their best football. John Runyan is his best self at left guard. Why are you going to put him at right guard? Right? Like, why are you going to put a guy who is better at a position and move him because you have a hole there? Jermaine Illuminor is a better right guard than he is a left guard. He actually has experience there. So, in my opinion, the Jermaine Illuminor playing left guard during training camp or whatever, like spring ball, it was simply just to get him some reps because I do think that they want to be prepared for any possible situation in case of injury or anything of that nature. But in my eyes, it's right tackle is his job to lose. Evan Neal's got to have a tremendous training camp to unseat him, in my opinion, because he knows this blocking scheme. He's coming off an above-average year with the Raiders. He wants to be here. He wants to put the effort in. He's a high work rate guy. He has earned the right to be the starting right tackle. Evan Neal has done nothing to earn that job. And I'm tired of handing out. I'm tired of handing out freaking candy to people. You know what I mean? I'm tired of giving people jobs they don't deserve. And Evan Neal fits that mold, unfortunately. And I wish he didn't. I wish he was better. I wish he was healthy. And it's just the reality of the situation. But if the Giants want to win football games and not put us through another miserable season, they need to put the best players at their strengths, at their positions where they are the best version of themselves. And that means John Runyan at left guard, and it means Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. So Greg Van Roten, why does he need to be signed? Because we don't have that much talent at right guard, and we need more guys with experience there. Otherwise, we're leaning on really young players with not much not much experience under their belt to step in and be competent, and that's very risky with a line that has multiple new pieces and John Michael Schmitz going into his second season.
Yeah, and getting some talent around John Michael Schmitz, I think, is really important because he had revolving doors around him at left guard and right guard, and he was dealing with injuries himself. So we didn't get the production out of John Michael Schmitz that we were hoping for from his rookie season. But having some solid talent on each of his shoulder might be the way to remedy that and make him perform at a higher level in year two. But Alex, you kind of mentioned some of the other younger talents on the roster when discussing Greg Van Roten. I am curious if you think this potential signing of Van Roten says anything about those young talents, like about Marcus McKethin and Josh Azidu, because to me, I feel like Josh Azidu is a sneaky player with his back against the wall. He's gotten starting reps at left guard in his career through 2 years. He's gotten starting reps at left tackle. Hasn't played well at either of those positions. Again, probably not his fault, but really hasn't developed into the hopeful starter that the Giants drafted 3 years ago in the third round of the draft. They were hoping for him to become a starter within 3 years' time. That's not happened. So Josh Azidu, what does his future look like? I think it's in question. And the fact that in the spring, they were training him, yes, at guard, but also at right tackle, it almost feels to me like they're trying to find a home for Josh Azidu and maybe feeling like it's now or never for him to become a player who can really contribute for them rather than just be like a meddling backup for them. So I'm curious to know if you think that the potential signing of Greg Van Roten says anything about Josh Azidu, maybe his roster security not completely intact here. Maybe he is fighting for a spot on the roster as we head into training camp in the summer. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. Maybe you don't feel that way. That might be a little bit extreme with Josh Azidu because he's still a young player. But what do you think a signing of a veteran guard like Van Roten at this stage in the offseason would mean for a guy like Azidu or any of these other young backups?
I mean, Azudu has been bad, to say the least. He's 24 years old now, former third-round pick. I don't think you give up on him just yet, personally. I think you give him the 2024 season, and then you recalibrate and say, all right, like, what did he do? But he's not starting on this line, that's for sure. He hasn't played that much. He's been a backup. He's had some injuries. He got cooked at left tackle last year, absolutely cooked. I mean, that's the game where Daniel Jones got hit in the neck against Miami. He just wasn't even looking. Guy was by the time he even lifted his head. He's a better left guard, but still a bad player there. Like, look, the truth is that this Giants, and look, I don't know if it was Bobby Johnson. I don't know if it was lack of chemistry. I don't know if it was Daniel Jones. I don't know who it was. I'm going to put most of the blame on Bobby Johnson because he was the offensive line coach. There are basically every single player on this team took no developmental steps in the last 2 years, right? Last 2 years, Andrew Thomas was already great when Bobby Johnson got here, right? This offensive line has taken zero steps forward. Zero. And in fact, I would say -5 is probably where we've gone. Negative steps, right? We've seen guys get worse. Evan Neal getting worse than his college days. I mean, what are we doing here, man? So Carmen Brasillo, the transition here, it needs to work. We have to see growth from somebody. You can't get worse in the NFL, man. You're a third-round pick. I mean, look, I know players don't pan out, but to get worse over time is a telling sign of bigger problems here. So, that's kind of how I feel at the moment. Josh Azudu, I want to see what Carmen Brasillo can do with some of these offensive linemen. I want to see if he can actually get the best out of him. The development traits are there. I think that there's room to grow. We just need to see signs of it. And Carmen Brasillo may be that guy. So it's too soon for me to cut any of these guys. I mean, there probably are some that would be more in line of losing their spine. Like Aaron Stinney is a guy that the Giants signed this year as well. They have some depth pieces here, but not everyone can make this roster. Not everyone's going to be on this offensive line, but Aaron Stinney might be a guy that loses his job if they sign a guy like Greg Van Roten. You know what I mean? Like there might be a position battle there. So I do think that the more the merrier. I don't think that I'm leaning on Josh Zuder. Like, I'm tired of giving these guys reps if they're not going to develop. The chances they do get, they need to step up during training camp, during practice. They have to impress. If injuries happen, they need to step in and produce. So right now, I kind of feel as though I really just hope that this Giants team takes steps in the right direction. This offensive line has to. It's been too long without a single player that's developed aside from Andrew Thomas. So hopefully Brasillo offers us a little bit more than what we've seen in the past.
Right, and reminder with this Giants offensive line, just when you think that it can't get any worse, somehow it does. That's been the trend in recent years, but honestly, I do think this is the year it turns around. I have a lot of confidence in Carmen Brasillo. I think he's a great coach, and he got a lot of production out of a little amount of talent last year with the Las Vegas Raiders, developed that team, developed that offensive line into a really solid unit. And I'm hoping that, with this Giants offensive line, has a bunch of third-round picks, first-round picks, second-round picks. They've got talent across the board. Hopefully he can put that talent to good use and develop it properly, because the talent hasn't looked very talented over the past couple of years and hasn't developed and panned out. But maybe it is coaching, man. Maybe it is just about getting the right coach in there, and Carmen Brasillo being that guy. Well, that could change things. So it'll be interesting to see how things shape out. But of course, the offensive line, it'll be the talk of the town for the next few weeks throughout training camp. And of course, with training camp underway this week, you can be sure that there's going to be endless updates on Giants training camp right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.